She swore she loved me, but every secret, every betrayal led me to one brutal truth. The woman I trusted most was the one who destroyed me. I always thought betrayal was something that happened to other people. You hear about it in movies, in stories online, whispered in conversations about someone else's misfortune, but you never think you'll be the one living it. For most of my relationship, I believed I had found the love of my life. She was beautiful, warm, and carried herself in a way that made me feel like the luckiest man alive. We met when I was 27, and from the very first date, I was hooked. She had a young son from a previous relationship, but that never scared me away. If anything, I admired her strength, how she managed to balance motherhood and still carry herself with grace. Our bond grew fast. Dinners, late-night talks, weekends spent at the park with her son. It felt like I was stepping into the role of a father figure without even realizing it. She would smile at me with a kind of gratitude that made me feel like I was doing something meaningful. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building a real family. Then came the day she told me she was pregnant. I still remember that night, her trembling hands clutching the test, her eyes wide with both fear and joy. My heart stopped, then pounded so hard it almost hurt. She said it was mine, that she had no doubt. I was overwhelmed with emotion. Me? A father? I hadn't planned it, but I was ready to rise to the challenge. We cried, we laughed, we held each other until morning. In that moment, I swore to myself I would do everything in my power to protect this family. But looking back now, I realized that night was the beginning of a nightmare I never saw coming. The weeks that followed were some of the most intense of my life. Suddenly, every decision I made carried new weight. I started saving more aggressively, cutting back on nights out with friends, even pushing myself harder at work. The thought of bringing a child into this world was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. I imagined holding a tiny hand, teaching them how to ride a bike, watching them grow up. For the first time, I felt like my life had direction beyond myself. That white girlfriend leaned into the role of expectant mother perfectly. She'd rest her hand on her belly with this dreamy look, already acting like she could feel the baby moving. She'd talk about names, colors for the nursery, even what kind of stroller she wanted. I threw myself into it just as much, researching parenting tips late into the night, comparing cribs online, sketching out budgets. But beneath all the excitement, I started noticing small things, things that didn't fit. She was more secretive with her phone than ever, keeping it face down whenever I was around. There were times she'd run errands and be gone longer than made sense. When I asked, she brushed me off, saying pregnancy cravings or doctor visits explained it all. I wanted to believe her, and most of the time, I did. I loved her too much to let paranoia get the better of me. Then one evening, when she thought I was asleep, I overheard her whispering on the phone. The tone of her voice was different, soft, nervous, almost guilty. I couldn't catch the words, but my chest tightened with a sinking dread. Who was she talking to? And why did it sound like something she didn't want me to hear? I tried to shake it off, convincing myself I was overthinking. But the seed of doubt had been planted. And once it was there, it grew. That seed of doubt turned into an obsession I couldn't control. During the day at work, my mind kept drifting back to her hushed whispers, the way she shielded her phone from my sight, the unexplained absences. I kept asking myself if I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was just hormones. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe I was inventing shadows where there weren't any. But every little thing started to look suspicious. When she came home late with shopping bags, I'd ask what she bought, and she'd snap that I didn't trust her. When her phone buzzed and she rushed to silence it, I'd feel a pit in my stomach. I tried not to snoop, but curiosity gnawed at me, and guilt for feeling that way ate me alive. One night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned beside her, my mind spinning. Finally, I got up, went to the living room, and stared at the baby clothes catalog we'd been thumbing through earlier. On the coffee table, tucked under it, was her planner. I shouldn't have, but I opened it. Most pages were harmless: doctor appointments, grocery lists, reminders about prenatal vitamins. But on a few days, I noticed vague notes written in shorthand. Meet up, don't forget, important. No names, no locations. Just cryptic scribbles that left my heart pounding. That I told myself it could be innocent. Yet the more I thought about it, the more it felt deliberate, like she was hiding something. And then, a darker thought crept in. What if the baby wasn't even mine? I hated myself for even thinking it, but the possibility clung to me like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every smile she gave me suddenly felt rehearsed, every touch rehearsed. And the more I questioned it in my mind, the less I could focus on anything else that be why the time morning came. I was no longer just a man preparing to be a father. I was a man drowning in suspicion, caught between the joy of becoming a dad and the terror that my entire life was being built on a lie. The next few days felt like I was living in a fog. I'd sit across from her at dinner, listening to her talk about baby names, and instead of feeling excitement, I'd be scanning her face for cracks in the story. Did she avoid eye contact? Did her smile falter when I asked casual questions about her day? The paranoia was suffocating. Every time her phone buzzed, my chest tightened. She'd excuse herself to the bedroom, saying she needed to rest, but I'd hear faint whispers through the door, hushed tones that stopped the second I came close. And when I asked who she was talking to, her answers were clipped. Just a friend. Don't be so controlling. That word, controlling, cut deep. I wasn't trying to control her. I was trying to hold onto the fragile threads of trust that were unraveling faster each day. Yet the more I pushed for answers, the more she pulled away, leaving me stranded in my own doubts. One evening, I walked into the kitchen and saw her hastily shove her phone into the pocket of her hoodie. I froze. She caught me staring, and for a second, her face was pale, like she'd been caught. Then she recovered, forcing a laugh and changing the subject to what we should have for dinner. I tried to laugh with her, tried to push the gnawing suspicion aside. But the damage was already done. That single moment felt like confirmation that there was someone else that night. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by two competing images. One of me holding my newborn child with pride and love, and another of me raising a baby that wasn't mine. Betrayed and humiliated by the one person I thought I could trust most. The closer we got to the due date, the stronger the panic grew. I wasn't just worried about being a good father anymore. I was terrified I might not even be the father at all. It was like living with a ticking time bomb. Every smile from her felt rehearsed. Every affectionate touch felt like an act. And maybe the worst part was how normal everything looked on the outside. Friends congratulated us. Families sent messages of joy. And yet inside my own home, I felt like I was standing on a crumbling floor, waiting to plunge into darkness. One night, unable to bear the gnawing doubts, I sat in the living room long after she'd gone to bed. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the fridge, but my mind was screaming. I thought about all the times she had been vague about where she was. The late evenings, running errands, the sudden showers she took after coming home, the defensiveness every time I even mentioned trust. I pulled out my phone and started searching. At first, it was just mindless, scrolling articles about paternity, reading about men who raised children only to find out years later they weren't theirs. Some of their stories sounded eerily familiar, like echoes of my own fears. The bitterness in their words was chilling, the way they described loving children who weren't biologically theirs, only to feel crushed when the truth came out. The more I read, the more restless I became. I started looking into options, DNA tests, discrete services, even apps that shipped test kits right to your door. My heart pounded as I realized how easy it was. With just a cheek swab, I could know the truth. But then another wave of panic hit me. What if I did the test and proved my worst fear? Could I handle that reality? The thought of secretly swabbing the baby after it was born made me feel sick, like I was betraying her trust. But wasn't it her betrayal that had planted this seed of doubt in the first place? As the clock ticked past 2 a.m., I was still sitting there, staring at the glow of my phone screen, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the future of that child, about whether I could look at them with pure love or if I'd always see a living reminder of her betrayal. It'd be why the time I finally forced myself to bed. I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep drifting in this fog forever. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it might destroy me. The decision gnawed at me for days, like a shadow I couldn't escape. Every time I looked at her, I wondered if she sensed it. The shift in me, the cold suspicion I couldn't shake. She'd catch me staring sometimes, and instead of feeling warmth, I felt this heavy knot of mistrust pulling me down. I started testing the waters, asking seemingly innocent questions. When she said she was meeting a friend, I casually asked which one. She'd answer too quickly, almost rehearsed. When she mentioned errands, I'd ask for details about where she went. And though her answers sounded reasonable, they felt off, like puzzle pieces that fit together too perfectly, almost as if she had prepared them. But I knew asking wasn't enough anymore. I needed something concrete. So one evening, after she had gone to bed, I pulled out my laptop and ordered a DNA test kit. My hands trembled as I typed in the shipping details, making sure to send it to a discreet locker instead of our house. Just the act of doing it made my chest tighten, like I had crossed an invisible line that I in the following days. I found myself hyper-aware of everything she did. Every time she smiled, every time she touched her stomach as if bonding with the baby, I wondered, am I watching a lie unfold? Am I being set up to raise a child that isn't even mine? At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I thought about my father, how he had always told me that trust was the foundation of any relationship. What would he say now, if he knew his son was secretly preparing to test the paternity of his unborn grandchild? Would he call me paranoid, or would he see the cracks the same way I did? When the test kit finally arrived, I held it in my hands like it was a weapon. Small, harmless looking, just a box. But inside was the potential to destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. That I placed it in the back of my closet, hidden under a pile of clothes, waiting for the day I could use it. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I slept a little easier, not because I had answers, but because I had a plan. But deep down, a darker question lingered. What if the truth I was chasing was the very thing that would break me completely? The further her pregnancy progressed, the heavier my suspicions grew. What should have been a time of excitement, doctor's appointments, nursery planning, baby shopping, was instead drenched in unease. That I noticed little things first. Her phone was never far from her hand. She used to leave it lying on the counter or plugged in by the bed, but now it was always face down, always locked. Whenever a notification buzzed, she'd glance at it too quickly, her thumb swiping across the screen before I could even register the sound. Then there were the calls. Late-night whispers in the hallway when she thought I was asleep. Sometimes she'd step outside to get some air, phone pressed tightly to her ear, her voice low and urgent. When I asked who it was, she would shrug and say it was her mother or a friend from work. But her eyes never held steady on mine when she answered. The biggest crack came one Saturday morning. I woke up earlier than usual and walked into the kitchen to find her on the phone. She didn't hear me at first. Her voice was hushed, but the words still reached me. He doesn't know anything. Just wait. After the baby. She froze when she realized I was standing there. Her face went pale, then quickly turned defensive. She claimed she was talking about a surprise baby shower, that she didn't want me to know. That it sounded rehearsed. Too clean. Too easy. That night, I sat in the dark living room staring at the hidden DNA kit in my closet. My chest burned with anger and betrayal, but underneath it all was fear. Fear that my entire future was built on a lie. That I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I decided that once the baby was born, I'd use the test. Quietly. Secretly. No more speculation, no more questions. Just the truth, however brutal it might be. And yet, even as I made that choice, part of me wondered if I was strong enough to face what I might discover. The day my son was born should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, not knowing if the ground beneath me would hold or give way. The delivery room was a blur of bright lights, urgent voices, and beeping monitors. She clutched my hand, squeezing so tightly that my fingers went numb. When the baby's first cry filled the room, my chest tightened, not with joy, but with a suffocating mix of love and doubt. That I held him for the first time, his tiny body warm against my chest. Everyone in the room was smiling, congratulating us, calling me dad. But in the back of my mind, a cruel voice whispered, "What if you're not? What if this is all a lie?" The first weeks were exhausting. Sleepless nights, endless feedings, constant crying. But layered beneath all that was the gnawing thought that wouldn't let go. I found myself studying the baby's features obsessively. His nose, his hair, the shape of his eyes. Did he look like me? Was there even a trace of me there? Or was I desperately trying to see something that wasn't? My girlfriend seemed to sense my unease. She became more protective, more controlling. She rarely let me be alone with the baby, always hovering nearby. At first, I chalked it up to new mother anxiety. But soon I realized it was more than that. She didn't want me having the opportunity to do what I was planning. And she was right. One night, While she finally managed to sleep, I crept into the nursery. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the baby monitor. My hands shook as I swabbed the inside of my son's cheek and carefully sealed it in the test kit. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might wake her. When I slipped the package into the mailbox the next morning, my stomach churned with dread. I told myself I wasn't looking for an excuse to leave. I was looking for the truth. But deep down, I feared the truth might destroy everything. The next few days were torture. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped into my throat. When the email finally arrived, I almost couldn't bring myself to open it, but I did. And what I read made my knees buckle. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the phone. The words on the screen swam before my eyes, but no matter how many times I blinked, they didn't change. Probability of paternity, 0.0. Not even a fraction of hope. The baby I had been rocking to sleep, feeding in the dead of night, whispering promises of protection to. He wasn't mine. It felt like someone had ripped the floor out from under me. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I stumbled to the bathroom, locked the door, and sank to the floor with my back against the cold tiles. My entire body shook as silent sobs racked through me. Images flashed through my mind like cruel slides. Her telling me she loved me. Her tears of joy when she told me she was pregnant. Her insistence that we were building a family together. And now, all of it collapsed into lies. Rage surged up, hot and blinding. I wanted to storm into the bedroom, wake her, and throw the truth in her face. To demand answers. To demand why she had chosen me to carry this burden of betrayal. But then I thought of the baby. Innocent. Blameless. Sleeping peacefully in the nursery. With no idea that the man who had cradled him since birth was now shattered beyond repair, that I stayed in that bathroom for hours, fighting with myself. Part of me wanted to pack my bags and walk out without a word. Another part wanted to expose her lies to everyone. Her family, her friends, the world. But the loudest voice in my head kept whispering the same question. What if I still can't let go? What if, despite everything, I already love this child too much to walk away? I wiped my face, stared at my reflection in the mirror, and saw a man I barely recognized, broken, betrayed, and trapped in a choice that could define the rest of his life. And as dawn crept through the window, I realized I had no idea what I was going to do next, that I didn't confront her right away. For the next 2 days, I lived like a ghost in my own house. On the surface, nothing seemed different. I held the baby when she asked, made dinner when it was my turn, even forced a smile when she talked about mundane things like bills or grocery lists. But inside, every moment felt like a dagger. Every laugh she gave me sounded fake. Every glance from her eyes felt like poison. And every time I looked at that baby, I felt a war inside me. Love fighting against rage. Tenderness battling with betrayal. That night, I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling while she slept soundly. How could she sleep so peacefully while I was drowning in the truth? Did she know I had found out? Was she waiting for me to explode? Or did she really believe her lies were still safe? I noticed things I had never paid attention to before. The way she clutched her phone tighter when she texted. The slight hesitation before answering questions about where she'd been. The avoidance in her eyes when I looked too deeply into them. It was like my entire world had been rewritten, and I was the only one who could see the new script. I wasn't living with a partner anymore. I was living with a stranger, and the longer I stayed silent, the more the silence consumed me. My chest felt like it was caving in, my head a constant storm of questions with no answers. By the third night, I knew I couldn't hold it in anymore. I wasn't just going to confront her, I was going to tear the mask off and force her to look at the truth she'd buried. The only question was how explosive I was willing to make it. The morning of the confrontation, I felt like my entire body was wired with electricity. I couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. My mind was locked on one single point. Today I would end the lies. She was in the kitchen making coffee, humming a tune like it was just another normal day. That sound, so casual, so oblivious, nearly drove me insane. How could she hum while I was standing there with the truth that could shatter everything? I walked in, sat down at the table, and slid the envelope across to her. The one with the DNA test inside. The one that had been burning a hole in my soul ever since I opened it. She froze when she saw it. Her hand hovered above it, trembling slightly. She tried to laugh it off at first, asking what this was supposed to mean, but her voice cracked halfway through the sentence that I didn't need to say much. My silence was enough. My eyes locked on hers, unblinking, daring her to keep playing the game. Finally, she tore it open, scanned the words, and I watched the color drain from her face. For a few long moments, the kitchen was dead silent. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint hiss of the coffee maker filling the void. Then she whispered something under her breath, too quiet to catch, but I knew it wasn't an admission. It was an excuse forming. That was the moment I realized she was never going to come clean on her own. Not once. She was going to cling to her lies until the very end, even as the walls collapsed around her. And that made my rage boil hotter than anything I'd ever felt before. The excuses started pouring out of her like a broken faucet. She clutched the DNA paper in her hands, her voice shaky but desperate, weaving half-truths and contradictions as if she could bury the evidence under a mountain of words. She said the test must have been wrong, that labs made mistakes all the time. She said maybe there was a mix-up, maybe I ordered it wrong, maybe someone had tampered with it. Her tone shifted from defensive to pleading, like she was testing which version might break through my anger. But every word she spoke only made the air heavier, thicker, more suffocating. The kitchen felt smaller by the second, as if the walls themselves were closing in to witness her downfall. Then she tried another tactic: tears. Her eyes welled up, her voice cracked, and she choked out how hard life had been, how she'd been scared and alone back then. She insisted she hadn't meant to hurt me, that she thought keeping quiet was for the best. But here's what cut the deepest. She shifted the blame. She said if I had been more trusting, if I hadn't always been so suspicious, maybe none of this would have happened. She twisted my loyalty into weakness, my devotion into stupidity that I stood there, fists clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms, listening to her unravel in real time. Every excuse, every tear, every attempt to rewrite the past was like a knife carving away what little was left of my trust. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a war. Her words echoed in my head like static, but they weren't sinking in. Not because I didn't hear them, but because deep down I knew none of it mattered anymore. Excuses couldn't erase the sleepless nights I'd spent working double shifts to support our home. Tears couldn't undo the promises she whispered to me in the dark, swearing loyalty while building her castle on lies that I realized something in that moment. Her panic wasn't about losing me. It was about losing the stability I provided, the bills I paid, the roof I secured, the quiet certainty of a man who always showed up, even when life got hard. And suddenly, my anger shifted. It wasn't fire anymore. It was ice. Cold, sharp, unshakable. I felt my shoulders drop, my fists loosen, my breath steady. She kept crying, begging me to understand, but her voice sounded distant, like it was coming from another room in my head. I replayed every moment I had ignored my instincts. The odd late-night phone calls she brushed off. The way her eyes lingered on her phone a little too long. The sudden nights she claimed she was too tired to talk. Every red flag I had folded neatly and stuffed into the drawer of denial came rushing back, and now that drawer had burst wide open that I wasn't her safety net anymore. I wasn't her backup plan. I wasn't going to be the man who patched up her mistakes while she smiled in someone else's arms. The calm that settled over me was almost terrifying. Because I knew, for the first time, exactly what I had to do. This wasn't about asking for more answers. This wasn't about piecing together a timeline of betrayal. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-respect, and my future. And as I looked her straight in the eyes, her face streaked with mascara and desperation, I realized she could see it too. She knew something inside me had snapped, not in rage, but in resolve. I was done. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor with a sound that cut through her sobs like a blade. She froze, eyes wide, as if she already knew what was coming but couldn't bear to face it. For the first time in weeks, maybe even months, my mind was crystal clear. I wasn't replaying her excuses, I wasn't wondering what I could have done differently, and I wasn't weighing whether forgiveness was an option. All that noise was gone. I told her. Calm, steady, no yelling this time. That trust isn't something you rebuild with words. It's built with actions, and she had already burned every bridge back to me. I reminded her that I gave her everything. Patience when she was struggling, loyalty when things got tough, and love when she didn't even love herself. And in return, She handed me betrayal dressed up as affection. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Maybe because deep down, she knew I was right. I grabbed my keys from the counter. Each step toward the door felt heavy but freeing, like I was dragging the last chains of her betrayal with me and then dropping them behind. I could hear her whispering my name, broken, trembling, desperate. But I didn't turn back. The door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could actually breathe. The air outside was cool against my face, and it hit me. I wasn't leaving my life behind. I was leaving her lies behind, and maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of getting myself back. Walking down the street that night, I felt like I was finally stepping out of a cage I hadn't even realized I'd been locked inside. Every little lie she told me, every moment I doubted myself because of her games, it all weighed on me for so long. And with every step away from that apartment, I felt the weight lifting. I didn't feel victorious, not really. Betrayal doesn't leave you with a medal or a trophy. It leaves scars, bruises on your trust, cracks in your faith in people. But what I did feel was clarity. I had faced the truth, no matter how brutal. And I chose myself over her poison. I thought back to all the nights I'd stayed up waiting for her. All the texts I reread hoping to find reassurance. All the excuses I swallowed just to keep peace. And I realized something that shook me. I had been more afraid of losing her than losing myself. Tonight, that changed. She might still cry, still beg, still try to rewrite the story to make herself the victim. But deep down, we both know the truth. She didn't just betray me. She destroyed the one thing we can never get back: trust. And without trust, love is nothing but a beautiful mask covering a rotten core. So, am I the villain for walking away? Maybe in her story, I am. But in mine, I finally became the hero I needed all along. And sometimes, the bravest thing a man can do isn't fighting to hold on. It's having the strength to finally let go. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. That we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.